In the cold vacuum of the Charon Nebula, on a battlefield of shattered rock and twisted metal, a Cathar legionnaire lay dying. Its name was Xyler, and it was engineered for this moment. Its quad-jointed limbs, its redundant circulatory system, its chiseled carapace, all were the product of 1,000 generations of focused genetic refinement. It was, by any galactic consortium standard, a perfect soldier. And it had been broken by a single plasma burst from a primitive human slug thrower. Xyler's internal chronometer marked 7 minutes since the fatal wound. Its own platoon's medic, a fellow Cathar, had taken one look, its multifaceted eyes registering the cascading organ failure, and administered the rites of finality. A quick, honorable death. But the Cathar medic had been vaporized before the rites could be completed. And so, Xyler lay waiting for the inevitable, its perfect mind cataloging its failure. Then a new figure knelt beside it. It was small, soft, encased in a bulky, inefficient-looking suit. A human. Its helmet was scuffed, its gauntlet stained with fluids of a dozen different colors and species. It carried no elegant stasis field projectors, no nanoswarm injectors. It carried a bag filled with clamps, tubes, and what looked like crude metal tools. This was a human medic, an absurdity, an evolutionary joke. Humans were the galaxy's underdogs, their bodies a chaotic mess of biological compromises. What could this creature possibly do? Xyler watched, its mind detached, as the human ripped open its own suit's pouch. It didn't consult a high-level diagnostic AI. It didn't scan for genetic markers. It placed 2 soft, fleshy fingers on Xyler's neck, then another 2 on its inner claw. It closed its eyes for a moment as if listening. Then it began to work. It bypassed the primary heart, which was shredded. It clamped a vessel the Cathar's own creators had deemed a vestigial evolutionary remnant and rerouted it, using a simple polymer tube, directly into the secondary ventricle. It injected a cocktail of stimulants, not with a precision auto-injector, but with a manual syringe, plunging it directly into the muscle mass of Xyler's shoulder. Pain, shocking and raw, flooded Xyler's senses, not the clean, final pain of a mortal wound, but a ragged, stubborn, living pain. It felt its secondary heart, a muscle designed only for low-oxygen environments, begin to hammer with a frantic, savage rhythm. It was a crude, ugly, barbaric fix. It was an insult to Cathar bioengineering. It was impossible, and it was working. The Legionnaire lived, but as it was dragged back to the human lines, a new feeling began to crystallize in its perfect, engineered mind, a feeling more unsettling than the prospect of death. It was a cold, primal dread. What it had just witnessed was not medicine. It was a form of necromancy, a profane violation of the natural order of things. And Xyler finally understood why, in hushed whispers across the front lines, the most hardened alien veterans didn't fear human marines or human starships. They feared the human doctor. They feared the medic's oath. This oath is not a promise of gentle mercy. It's not a vow of passive pacifism. The human medic's oath is a declaration of war against the very concept of an ending. It's a promise to drag life, kicking and screaming, back from a brink that other, more advanced species have deemed absolute. The galaxy looks at humanity and sees weakness, chaos, and biological fragility. They are fatally wrong. Our history on a planet that has tried to kill us for millions of years has forged a strength they cannot comprehend. A strength that is terrifying in its resilience. Today, we dissect the oath. We will uncover the 3 core principles that turn a human healer into a figure of strategic terror, and how you can forge these same principles into an unstoppable mindset in your own life. The first principle, the one that so terrified Legionnaire Xyler, is a foundational truth of human existence. It is the principle of chaotic adaptation. The motto is simple: Life finds a way, and I pave it. The great warrior races of the Galactic Consortium, the Cathar, the Synthezoid Vex, the Psionic Shill, all share a common philosophy: optimization. They are designed, they are streamlined for a single purpose. A Cathar is built for shock assault, a Vex for data warfare, a Shill for psychic infiltration. They are perfect, beautiful, and efficient, and they are fatally brittle. A system optimized for one environment shatters when that environment changes. A perfect blade has no flexibility. It can only break. Humanity is not a perfect blade. We are a length of rusted, pitted, unrefined iron. We can be bent, hammered, heated, and cooled, and we will only grow stronger. Our biology is a testament to this. We are a walking museum of evolutionary compromises, redundant systems, and bizarre workarounds. We have appendices that do nothing until they try to kill us. We have vestigial muscles from ancestors who swung in trees. We have a ridiculously complex immune system that sometimes decides to attack itself for no reason. We are a mess, and in that mess lies a terrifying strength. Consider the fall of the sky citadels of Xylos. The Cathar High Command, in a stroke of what they considered strategic genius, deployed a new bioagent against the human garrisons. The agent, Seraphim's breath, was elegant. It didn't cause messy explosions. It simply targeted the primary chlorophyll analog in the Cathar's own physiology, repurposed to attack the core protein responsible for oxygen absorption in the human lung. For any species with a single, optimized respiratory system, like the Cathar themselves, it was instant, clean, and 100% effective. A perfect weapon. They deployed it across the 5 major human citadels. They expected total silence within minutes. In 4 of the citadels, that's exactly what they got. The garrison suffocated, their advanced atmospheric systems rendered useless. But in the 5th citadel, Citadel Primus, something went wrong. The death toll stalled at 30%. Then resistance fighters began to emerge from the citadel, not gasping for air, but fighting with a renewed, savage fury. The Cathar were baffled. Their perfect weapon had failed. It took them weeks of analyzing captured human corpses to understand why. The answer came from the log of a single human doctor, a xenobiologist named Aris Thorne. When the attack began, Thorne didn't try to cure the afflicted. He knew that was impossible. He didn't try to invent a complex counteragent. He recognized the attack for what it was, a shutdown of the primary system. So he looked for a secondary one. And he found it. Human beings, unlike the Cathar, don't just absorb oxygen through their lungs. A small, almost negligible amount is absorbed directly through the skin. It's a useless evolutionary leftover from a time when our amphibious ancestors crawled out of the muck. In normal circumstances, it's completely insignificant. But Dr. Thorne knew it was there. He didn't see a flaw, he saw an opportunity. He ordered the Citadel's survivors into the hydroponics bays, which were saturated with pure, humid oxygen. He had them strip off their armor. Then, he administered a crude, makeshift cocktail of hyperadrenal stimulants and neural agonists, compounds he synthesized from agricultural fertilizers and basic medical supplies. His goal was not to heal the lungs, but to force the body's entire metabolic rate into overdrive, compelling every cell to absorb the trace amounts of oxygen through the skin. It was agonizing. It was a brutal, ugly, biological sledgehammer, but it worked. The human soldiers survived, breathing through their skin like primitive amphibians, their bodies screaming in protest, but alive. More than alive, enraged. The Cathar command watched the footage in horror. Their elegant, perfect weapon, the pinnacle of their bioengineering, was defeated by a biological glitch. An evolutionary absurdity that their philosophy of perfection couldn't even comprehend. Dr. Thorne didn't just heal his soldiers. He weaponized a flaw. He turned a human weakness into a Cathar nightmare. This is the brutal truth for you. Your perceived flaws, the things you've been told are weaknesses, the inconsistencies and glitches in your personality and your past, are not liabilities. They are your redundancies. They are your hidden strengths. Society, your job, your teachers, they all push you towards optimization. Find your one great talent. Focus on your core competency. Streamline your life for maximum efficiency. This is the philosophy of the brittle. It's the philosophy of the Cathar. It prepares you perfectly for one specific scenario and leaves you utterly exposed when that scenario changes. The man who can only succeed in a rising market is destroyed by a downturn. The man whose entire identity is tied to one relationship is annihilated by a breakup. The man who has one perfect plan is paralyzed when it meets first contact with reality. Embrace your chaotic nature. Cultivate multiple skills, even those that seem unrelated. Read books on subjects far outside your field. Learn to fix an engine, to cook a meal from scratch, to navigate without a GPS, to argue a point, to calm a screaming child. Be a patchwork, be a mess. Because when your primary system fails, and it will fail, when your career path hits a dead end, when your main source of income dries up, when your perfect plan shatters, you need a secondary system to kick in. You need to be able to breathe through your skin when the air gets poisoned. This chaotic adaptability is not a sign of a lack of focus. It is the ultimate expression of resilience. It's the first reason they fear the medic, because he doesn't see a broken machine. He sees a dozen other machines hiding inside the wreckage, waiting to be turned on. The second pillar of the medic's oath is what truly breaks the enemy's mind. It is the mastery of psychology. The medic's true battlefield isn't flesh and bone, it's the will of the enemy. The core tenet is this: I don't just mend bodies, I break wills. An alien soldier, a Vorlag raider, for instance, operates on a simple, brutal calculus of violence. They fire their weapon. They see an enemy fall. Their HUD confirms biosign termination. The target is neutralized, cause and effect. It is clean, logical, and final. This finality is the bedrock of their morale. They are the agents of the end. Now imagine that Vorlag raider on the front lines of the siege of Proxima B. He's in a firefight with a platoon of human marines. He gets a bead on one, a corporal. He squeezes the trigger, a perfect shot. The human goes down, armor sparking, a gaping wound in his chest. The Vorlag's HUD flashes, target expired. The raider grunts in satisfaction and moves to the next target. It is done. 15 minutes later, pinned down behind cover, the Vorlag peeks out, and he sees the corporal again. The same man. His armor is patched with some kind of metallic foam. He's moving stiffly. But he's alive. He's firing his weapon. He's screaming curses at the Vorlag. The raider's mind freezes. It's impossible. He checks his rifle's diagnostic, perfect working order. He checks his HUD's recording. The kill was confirmed. Yet there stands the ghost. The Vorlag's understanding of the universe, of the simple physics of violence, begins to crack. He kills another human. 20 minutes later, that one is back too, a crude cybernetic shunt where an arm used to be, firing a pistol with their remaining hand. This is the work of the human medic. This is the legend of the ghost of Outpost Gamma. The story is told across the consortium fleets. Outpost Gamma was a desolate human listening post in the Terminus sector, manned by only 50 soldiers and a single medic, Dr. Alara Vance. It was attacked by a fleet of Vorlag raiders, a species whose entire military doctrine is built on terror and morale shock. They don't just kill you. They make sure your death is a spectacle designed to break your comrades. They wound, they maim, they let the screams do their work. Against any other species, it would have worked. But Dr. Vance was human. The Vorlag would wound a soldier with a disruptor blast, blowing off a limb. They would leave him to bleed out, his cries demoralizing the defenders. But Vance would be there in the trench, under fire, not with a sterile medbay, but with a blowtorch and a handful of metal plates. She would cauterize the wound, slap on a crude tourniquet, pump the soldier full of painkillers and stimulants, and shove a rifle back into his hands. She used spare parts from damaged service droids to fashion prosthetic limbs on the fly. She performed surgery with a combat knife sterilized in burning alcohol. The Vorlag watched in disbelief. The humans they wounded didn't stay down. They didn't scream and die. They came back. They came back scarred, limping, and unbelievably angry. The Vorlag, who prided themselves on being the scariest thing in the galaxy, were confronted by something they couldn't process. A force that simply refused to die. The 50-man garrison began to feel like an army of immortal demons. The Vorlag's morale, the very weapon they wielded, shattered. After 3 days, they didn't just retreat. They fled. They abandoned a strategically vital position not because they were outgunned, but because they were psychologically broken by one doctor who refused to let her people die. Dr. Vance didn't just save her outpost. She turned the enemy's own strategy against them. She weaponized hope. She weaponized resilience, and in doing so, she became a terror. This is the brutal truth for your own life. Your resilience is a psychological weapon. Every time you get knocked down by life, you fail a test, you lose a job, you get rejected, you face a setback, you have 2 choices. You can stay down, confirming to the world and to yourself that the blow was fatal, or you can get back up. When you get back up, you are doing more than just continuing your own journey. You are sending a powerful, demoralizing message to whatever knocked you down. Whether it's a competitor in business, a rival for a promotion, or the internal voice of your own doubt and negative thinking. Your comeback screams, "Was that your best shot? It wasn't enough. I am still here. And not only am I here, I learned from the fall. I am now stronger, and you have to deal with me again." Think about it. What is more terrifying to an opponent? The one who has never lost, or the one who has lost 100 times and is still standing in front of you, ready for another round? The undefeated fighter is a myth waiting to be broken. The fighter who cannot stay broken is a nightmare. This is how you break the will of your own weakness. When you fail your diet, you don't quit. You get up the next morning and you go to the gym twice as hard. You send a message to your lazy impulses. Your victory was temporary. My resolve is permanent. When a project at work fails, you don't hide and blame others. You are the first one in the office the next day with a 10-page report on what went wrong, why it went wrong, and a plan to make sure it never happens again. You send a message to your superiors and your colleagues. Failure does not define me. My response to failure does. Cultivate this reputation for yourself. Be the one who cannot be kept down. It's not about never falling. It's about the terrifying, absolute certainty in the minds of your opposition that you will always, always get back up. This is the mastery of psychology. This is how a healer becomes a warrior. They don't just patch the wound. They send the wounded back into the fight as a symbol of defiance, a ghost that haunts the enemy's confidence until it collapses. The third and final pillar of the medic's oath is perhaps the most insidious, the most intellectually terrifying to the galaxy's elite. It is the intimate knowledge of failure. Its credo is devastatingly simple. Your perfection is a blueprint of your weakness. A human doctor from the first day of medical school is immersed in a singular subject: failure. They study disease, the failure of organs. They study trauma, the failure of structure. They study genetics, the failure of code. They spend a decade or more learning in excruciating detail every single way a complex biological system can break, decay, and fall apart. Their entire profession is a response to the universe's inherent chaos and entropy. Now consider a species like the silicates of Cygnus X1. They are not biological in the way we understand it. They are crystalline life forms, sentient geological structures. Their bodies are flawless, interlocking lattices of silicon and rare minerals, grown in the crushing gravity of their homeworld. They are nearly impervious to energy weapons which simply refract off their bodies. They are immune to kinetic slugs, which shatter against their diamond-hard carapaces. In their first contact war with the Galactic Consortium, they were an unstoppable force. Entire fleets were reduced to scrap metal. The Consortium saw only strength. They saw perfection. They were terrified. And then humanity entered the war. They didn't send their biggest battleships. They sent a small research vessel attached to the 7th Fleet. On board was a xenolinguist, a geologist, and a doctor named Kenji Tanaka. Tanaka was not a soldier. He was a specialist in geriatric medicine. He studied the process of aging and decay in humans. While the admirals and generals studied the silicate's strengths, Tanaka asked for access to their dead. He wanted the shattered fragments of the silicate soldiers recovered from battlefields. The military command thought he was mad, but they obliged. For months, Tanaka lived in his lab, surrounded by broken crystals. He wasn't looking for a bigger gun. He was looking for their version of arthritis, their version of cancer, their version of a common cold. He was looking for the way they failed. He found it. The silicate's crystalline structure was incredibly strong, but to maintain its integrity, it required a constant, low-level resonant frequency generated from a central node in their core, a biological pacemaker. It was a perfectly stable system. But Tanaka, with his intimate knowledge of how stable systems eventually fail, discovered a vulnerability. Using medical ultrasound imagers, he found that if you introduced a second, specific harmonic frequency, it didn't break the crystals. It created a resonance cascade, like a singer shattering a wine glass. It caused the silicate's own internal frequency to amplify uncontrollably, shaking them apart from the inside out. It was their version of a fatal aneurysm. A biological quirk they considered so minor, so utterly insignificant, that it wasn't even mentioned in their own medical texts, which were focused on maintaining optimization, not fixing fundamental flaws. Tanaka took his findings to the fleet's engineers. They were skeptical. He demonstrated it on a captured silicate shard, turning it to dust with a modified shield emitter. The human fleet in a single day retrofitted the shield arrays on their cruisers. They didn't fire a single weapon. They projected a sound. The invincible silicate armada, the terror of the quadrant, disintegrated. They shattered like glass sculptures in an earthquake. The war was won, and Kenji Tanaka, a quiet doctor who studied old age, became the most feared name in the silicate lexicon. They didn't fear him because he could kill them. They feared him because he understood them. He had studied their blueprints so carefully that he found the single, fatal crack in their perfect foundation. He turned their destruction into a simple, non-invasive medical procedure. This is the most potent truth of all for you. Stop being intimidated by the perceived perfection of the world around you, the flawless careers of your rivals, the perfect lives you see on social media, the monolithic strength of the corporations and systems that seem to tower over you. It is a facade. It is an illusion. Everything and everyone has a point of failure. Your power does not come from trying to match their strength head-on. That is a fool's game. Your power comes from becoming a student of failure. Study the systems. Don't look at what makes them work. Look for what would make them break. When you're in a negotiation, don't just listen to the other person's strengths. Listen for their insecurities, their deadlines, their hidden pressures. That is their resonant frequency. When you're facing a massive obstacle, don't just stare at its size. Analyze its structure. Where are the stress points? Where is the foundation weakest? And most importantly, apply this to yourself. Do not run from your failures. Do not bury your mistakes. Put them on a table and dissect them. Relive every bad decision. Analyze every weakness that led to the fall. Know your own failure points more intimately than you know your successes. Why? Because the man who knows his own weaknesses can protect them, and the man who has mastered the study of weakness in himself can see it in everyone else. He sees the world not as a collection of intimidating strengths, but as a series of systems, each with its own blueprint for collapse. The world worships success. It writes books about it, makes films about it, and builds monuments to it. This is a distraction. True, lasting, strategic power lies in understanding failure. Become a doctor of decay, a student of the breaking point. This is the third and most terrifying principle of the medic's oath. So let us bring this back from the cold of space to the fire in your own gut. The alien soldier, the Cathar, the Vorlag, the silicate, they do not fear the human medic's laser scalpel or his nanobots. They fear his philosophy. They fear what he represents. They fear the principle of chaotic adaptation because their perfection has made them brittle, while our messy, chaotic evolution has made us relentlessly adaptable. They fear a creature that, when its lungs are destroyed, simply learns to breathe through its skin. They fear the mastery of psychology because their warfare is based on a clean calculus of cause and effect, and the human medic turns the battlefield into a house of ghosts. They fear an enemy they have killed 3 times who is still shooting back. And most of all, they fear the intimate knowledge of failure. They fear a mind that doesn't see their strength, but instead sees their perfection as a blueprint, a detailed schematic pointing directly to their single, fatal flaw. The human medic's oath is a commitment to life, forged in the crucible of a world that has tried to extinguish it for eons. In a galaxy filled with optimized, engineered, and superior beings who have forgotten the messy, brutal, desperate struggle for survival, that simple oath to life is the most alien and terrifying concept of all. And you are a direct descendant of that same legacy. You are not a Cathar engineered in a lab for a single purpose. You are human. Every cell in your body carries the unwritten history of every ancestor who survived plague and famine and ice ages and wars. You are the result of millions of years of chaotic adaptation. You are not perfect. You are not optimized. You are resilient, and that is your ultimate weapon. So I ask you now to take this oath for your own life. Stop trying to polish your flaws into a veneer of perfection. Start sharpening them into weapons. Stop hiding your past failures. Start dissecting them for intelligence. Stop fearing the knockout blow. Start becoming the man whose capacity to get back up breaks the will of whatever dares to knock him down. Embrace the chaotic adaptability that is your birthright. Cultivate a resilience so absolute that it becomes a psychological weapon against your own doubts and the obstacles before you. Become a master student of failure in yourself and in the systems you wish to conquer. This is the medic's oath, repurposed for the war of your own life. Take that oath, right now, commit to it, and go forward not as a perfect soldier, but as a relentless, adaptable, impossibly resilient survivor. Become something that your challenges, your rivals, and your own weaknesses will learn to truly fear.